Greetings and welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. I am Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and today I'm with my daughter, Gabrielle Forrest. I've managed to coerce my daughter into going with me to see Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, and we're doing an early morning show on Tuesday. So we're going economy, but we're still stuck seeing it 3D, so I can't really tell you what it's like to see it in digital other than it didn't feel like you needed to see it in 3D. So, but we're seeing it in 3D. And afterwards, we're going to do a reaction review. Forrest actually has a considerable esoteric background, and of course, since she's grown up with me, she's familiar with the comics. And so she's familiar with the canon, and I wanted to see what her reaction would be at the end of this, relative to the mythological archetypes as expressed, as well as just if there were any significant violations of the established characters relative to what DC says Batman always does or will never do, the line Batman may never cross, and what Superman does. So, you ready to go see the movies?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, you guys, we'll be back in 2.5 hours plus some change. See you then. Okay, we're back from the movies, and I have with here my other daughter, Marlene. This is Forrest. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and we're talking about Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. So, before I go farther, on a scale of 1 to 10, or 1 to 5, what would you rate the movie? How many stars would you give it?
3.4.
3.4, okay.
I'm thinking maybe a solid 3 for sure, but more like 3.5.
3.5?
Yeah, it had some good
Okay.
action.
I actually have raised my review score. I was at a 2.5, and I'll kick it up to a 3 because of Ben Affleck. But that's because he was awesome. So, before we get too far into this movie, what did you guys think of the trailers? Were there any trailers that stood out in particular that made you go, whoa?
I think I only saw the ones on Hulu.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I like Suicide Squad.
I'm looking forward to the Blizzard movie.
Warcraft.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's one that you're going to have to see in 3D. Like, if anything, I feel that 3D is ultimately useless. We went and saw it in 3D this morning. I'm kind of with you on saying that it's not necessary in having it in 3D. Yeah. There are some Paramount moments where you're like, whoo, gun in my face. That you're kind of like, okay, 3D is alright, because I wouldn't normally ever know what that feels like. But at the same time, Blizzard is probably the only one that will totally use that technology to the fullest of its potential, and you'll probably actually be disappointed if you don't see it in 3D. I'm going to see it in 3D anyways. I don't know.
Yeah, even the trailer looked really awesome in 3D. I got to tell you, it was really cool. The other movies I'm looking forward to, Captain America: Civil War, and as part of that, as we were watching that trailer, the thing that I kept thinking to myself was that I'm going to start a movement right now, and you guys can carry on with this. I say there should be no third act trailers. And by that I mean
agree.
No third act trailers. I am so tired of seeing stuff that just spoils everything else.
I found myself sitting in the movie and realizing that I realize why a lot of people don't go see movies anymore. Because it's great when you have a trailer that leaves you like being like, oh, I wonder what the story has to offer. But if they show you so much, then you're already trying to formulate the story for yourself. And then when you go to it, it has nothing to do with what you were thinking the movie would have to do with because of the way that they put the trailer together. And like, I'm sure that's, I don't know. No, I just
Well,
don't
I was
like it.
actually surprised to see that Dawn of Justice actually paralleled very closely to what I had expected and predicted to see in my breakdown of the trailers with the Kabbalistic understanding of it. And in terms of Kabbalah, I think that the movie really did a good job of exemplifying that. Now, what did you think about the action? Like,
as far as being a DC fan, I really enjoyed the movie. I really enjoyed the action part. I definitely think they could have sped up the first half of the movie because we already know and love Batman and Superman and have a good idea of their place in the DC world and what they represent. And I mean, I get that it was pretty paramount to give what was going on and how Superman was going to be portrayed so that the whole, feud between the two of them are more powered. But I wish they had taken more from the actual comic book series, the actual animation movie, Batman vs. Superman, The Dark Knight.
Yep.
That was awesome. That was such a good movie. I think that the big fight scene should have stayed between Batman and Superman because that's what the movie was about.
Yeah, it was an ideological
I didn't
fight.
really think Doomsday needed to be there, but I think they really needed to find a reason to bring Wonder Woman in.
Because the fight had to not be about them.
Yeah, all of the previews of the Leaguers was fucking awesome. Freaking awesome. I really, really thought the Aquaman with his glowing eyes, that was cool when he came out of
What did you think of Aquaman?
I am so disappointed.
Oh, really?
Oh my god, I'm so disappointed. I couldn't help
You don't like
but
Jason Momoa?
I'm like, he doesn't look like Aquaman. Anybody from the DC universe knows what Aquaman looks like, and Jason looks like a drowning surfer. So I don't understand why they made him Aquaman.
They gave him some wicked tattoos, though.
Good
Those
for you,
tattoos.
Jason. You look real sexy with those tattoos.
I'm gonna wait
and
till
by
I
all
see
means, I'm
his
sure there's great
awesomeness.
women that are going to fantasize about you, but anybody that actually loves the comics wants to see a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, giant man as Aquaman. Which brings me to why I'm so frustrated by Wonder Woman.
Wow.
Like,
why?
what in the hell? She looked
Are
like
you
they
kidding
just
me?
went out, found a model, was like, hey girl, you
I don't
sexy.
think so.
Threw a Pocahontas
she
Wonder
did
Woman
an
outfit on
awesome
her.
job being
And
Wonder Woman. She had the screen on.
She did
Her
great
scream was
being
awesome.
Wonder Woman. She did not
Her yell
look like
cry.
Wonder Woman.
I
Yeah,
liked
she
her.
did.
So much
She
time
looks
before they
like
made
Wonder
the
Woman.
No.
Yes, she
No,
does.
have you not seen very many Wonder Woman movies?
I've seen
I'm
a
so
lot of
upset right
them.
now. I'm so
I've
upset right now.
seen
She had months
lot
before the
of
movie was
these
being
movies.
made. She could have gone and lifted some weights. Like, I don't want to see. I don't want to see a little frail woman. She was not buff.
Yeah.
Do you want to see buff? Look at my
Okay,
screensaver.
we're not
That is
talking
what I
about,
think it should
like,
be. That is a buff girl.
USA muscle
No, we
queen,
don't need
okay?
USA. We just need to have a cut bicep while she's holding onto the
bicep.
She
No,
was
she
pretty.
didn't.
Well,
I did not.
There was a
There was
couple
no
scenes.
flexing.
I
There
was
no
looking
flexing.
for it.
I want a toned, gorgeous Wonder Woman. By all means, be the exact same woman. Just hit the gym. Just hit the gym.
Wonder
Lift
Woman
a
is
couple
in the gym.
weights.
She hit the gym.
Lift a couple weights and just get as cut as the dudes that are standing next to you. Like, I want to see a cut woman as Wonder Woman. Like, she's intimidating because she has muscle. She's like
well, the
I said,
DC animated Wonder Woman
you know
is
what I'm
pretty
saying?
yoked.
Like,
I mean,
hard
come on.
work.
And she's tall, too.
Every
She's
cartoon's
like...
gonna be yoked
Yeah,
with
yeah,
big breasts,
yeah.
okay?
And she doesn't need to be that big brass. Like, all I'm saying is she looks like a runway model. She looks like a runway
Well, I
model
think
in a Pocahontas Wonder
Gal
Woman
Gadot
suit.
is a runway
And
model, I think, isn't she?
I would not be
I'm not
surprised.
sure.
And all that she needed to do was put on a little bit of muscle where she was like cut without flexing. Like the men around her. That's what Wonder Woman looks like all the time.
So
And
what
I'm
did
just
you
like,
think?
I don't know why you can't accept that because she looked gorgeous. She just needed to work out for a few months lifting weights.
What do you think about every time that she came on screen? It was.
All of them.
I like that. It was like her theme music.
I loved it. It was so funny. It was just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it was like things are about to get spicy up in here.
Well, I still stand by my request to DC to crank out a Wonder Woman movie ASAP
I
because
believe they are. Yeah.
she's got some seriously
She's got some
badass
serious
magic
magic
items.
story.
Just lift some weights before the movie.
Another comment.
And like
about
every
the
woman
movie
around you needs to lift weights too.
Right,
Because if we're
which
gonna
is
go to
more
Amazonia world,
prevalent.
like they need to be cut.
was
Just
the
saying.
vision that Batman has.
Oh yeah,
They
Apocalypse.
opened up
Yeah.
so much for the future League movies. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for. Like
Yep.
we were talking about what Flash had said, and he was, "Am I too soon? I'm too soon." And it's like, oh man, you know it's about to get cool up in there.
I thought the beginning of the movie could have completely dropped the Batman story.
Yes.
And started right up with
Right.
the ground level of watching Superman and Zod lay waste to
but in the
Metropolis.
defense of the director,
Because that would have been like Lethal Weapon 2 opening right out in the middle with the car race. Like
Sure.
just bam! And it would have grabbed me. Instead it was morose and dark, and then it ends with a funeral, morose and dark. And
No, what I think
And
he was
I-
trying to
I
do
was just-
was go.
They bookended.
I think it was almost like an initiation process for the director, being like, "Hey, look, see, I know all of this stuff, so I'm doing it in such a poetic and beautiful way. This is the way the origin story should open up as." You know what I mean?
Like for instance, blasting Superman with a nuclear bomb. Now that was drawn directly out of Dark Knight, but the context is completely reversed. In that one, it was a Russian missile going at American ships and basically going to start World War III, and he carries it off into a jungle and it blows up in the desert, right? Him recovering actually was different because it showed Frank Miller's understanding of electric universe principles, because he absorbed electromagnetic energy directly from the jungle. He just sapped an entire jungle down to dust to reconstitute himself. So Superman is beginning to understand his powers on a real visceral level, according to Frank Miller. In this, there was no reason to shoot him. Superman could have kept bumping Doomsday infinitely into space until he bumped him into the sun. And there was no need to shoot anybody with a missile because Doomsday couldn't fly. He just was a rock. So Doomsday's Hulk with crystals. No, he just jumped. He was Hulk. He was just jumping.
But with that concept, wouldn't Doomsday be powered by the sun too?
Well, yeah, but you'd burn him up. Maybe it would be too much sun. Or then knock him out to Pluto or something. You know, I don't know.
It just that concept falls apart.
Again,
it's a big universe. Knock him out of the solar system, come back,
They should have
and don't
saved
get
Doomsday for later.
Yeah, see, and then they could have saved him for later.
Absolutely.
Now, talking about Doomsday, the blood on his mouth. I mentioned this in my first thing, and this has to do with something we've talked about, with blood consciousness. There was no reason for Lex Luthor to be dripping his blood all over the mouth of Doomsday. This was a whole vampire type thing. It was weird. It was like this complete... It essentially it was a transfer of consciousness. I am now empowering you as the instrument of my will, which he literally then declares Doomsday to be later.
I just don't know where they were going with the whole Lex Luthor thing, though, because it was
I hated him.
some
I hated him even worse this
Frankenstein,
time. Eisenberg, jeez, man.
Mad Hatter thing going on. Like, I have no idea. If you read the comic books, if you've seen the animes, then Lex Luthor is a big, powerful man, equal to
like
Superman and
Batman.
Batman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know why they chose such a small, petite man, no bigger
I
than
have
a
the
woman.
answer. This is Lex Luthor's bastard son, who has daddy issues. No, seriously, that's all. And the whole time I was watching the movie the second time through, I'm just like, this has got to be like the son of the Lex that we all grew up with in the animations and stuff.
Right.
Like this is the equivalent of Damian Wayne or something, you know, with a really bad attitude. I don't know. It's obviously not. It was horrible.
Really?
I thought Lex Luthor was terrible. Now I get why he did it, but I hated
terrible.
Yeah.
I just hated
I
it.
liked him.
You liked him? I'm glad you liked him. Okay, cool. Tell me why you liked him.
I liked him because it was a different take on its character.
It was a different take, yeah.
I liked him because he is necessary to the story, because at the end he is screaming in a cell, "I've rung the bell, I've rung the bell."
No, he's the total reason for the story.
Yeah, so he needed to be there.
No, the character needs to be there.
Delivery of
The
the
actor's
character.
performance was just weird
And
to
the
me.
chosen actor.
Right.
Yeah, like they could have
I
picked a
didn't like
number
You
of
know,
different
just
guys.
like people are gonna have issues with Jared Leto being, you know, Joker. I mean, it's kind of all on what people can envision these characters being like. I mean, I think he did a great job with his whole psycho is a 3-syllable word for people that don't understand things.
Right,
You
no,
know,
no.
like,
And I like the
he does a
interaction
good job
between him.
being a little crazy little guy, you know.
Part of why these villains part of why they're so frightening is because they are just massive, and not massive in just their enterprise, but massive on their own with brute strength, like the Kingpin.
William D'Onofrio.
Exactly.
Yes, I was just thinking of that.
Someone like the
or
Kingpin
Vincent D'Onofrio, yeah.
being
Kingpin.
portrayed kind of like
But
Lex
to
Luthor.
fear someone with power doesn't mean they need to have physical power. I mean,
Exactly,
No,
but
that's
that's
true.
part
I'm
of
still
what
just
makes
as
these,
afraid as the
of
small
course,
man.
but
who's
that's part of what makes these
sneaky-
villains able to stand face to face and look eye to eye with their arch nemesis Superman. I mean, being a little itty bitty guy, and look, he was shaking.
Lex's power doesn't lie in his ability to fight. It
No.
lies in his mind. It lies in
Exactly.
his strategy for the game. It
But
lies
when
in,
you, but that's more like an Oswald Cobblepot. You know what I mean? So it's okay that, you know, he can be a little smaller as his portrayal and stuff like that. That makes a lot of sense. Because he's always trying to play the under. But when you're looking a man like Superman dead in the eyes, and you're a little guy, you're still going to be a little guy. But if you're this big guy who's also brilliant
he's
and
the
a
little
billionaire,
guy that holds all the cards.
I
the-
stand by
literally,
my
at one
ground.
point he was
It doesn't
one.
matter. I stand by my
Quite
ground.
literally.
Having someone like the Kingpin throw those cards at you versus this little guy throw those cards at you is way different, and one is way more powerful. Not only in just in an end prize, but in presence. The presence is what brings Lex Luthor's power to the table a lot of the time, and that guy had no presence. He was constantly regressing. Constantly. That
His
whole,
motivation to
you
me
know.
is what was confusing, because he started off under the cover of some kind of social consciousness. We want to have a bullet to protect us from this guy. And then he immediately casts that aside, and he engages in social terrorism by co-opting a disabled guy to nuke himself right there in a hearing, which
Yeah.
he had to have known wasn't going to hurt Superman. So that just makes
the
him...
whole point was to make Superman the villain.
Yeah, and you know, Superman's magical mountain talk with his dad and stuff, I appreciated it. I listened to it very carefully the second time. The first time my view was a bit jaded, just because, you know, I was like, oh, really? Kevin Costner's back. And the second time I wanted to really listen carefully to what he said, and the story was somewhat poignant, which is that I'm declared a hero because I saved this small thing, but as a consequence of my actions, all of these other things died, which brings me to the thing I want to talk about. He mentions in the story about horses dying, drowning. And this is something that I didn't catch, but you caught literally right at the very beginning of the movie. Bruce Wayne is running into the collapsed building, and the first thing that you see on camera is not Bruce Wayne, it's a horse. It's a mounted police horse. And what did you say?
A dark horse?
Dark horse or dark Horus? Horus.
Ba-dum-bum.
Da-dum-dum. It's a pun, and they do it 3 times in the movie, and they even do it to show Superman's progression as the archetype Horus. So the first time you see him walking without a mount. The second time you see the horse, is after the explosion at the Capitol building, and you get to see a police who's mounted on the horse rearing up exactly like the blue horse that you see at the Denver airport. And of course that blue horse has what color eyes? Bright red eyes. So we have a Horus in Superman who is clad in blue, who has bright red eyes when he's angry. We have a reference to that twice before, each time associated with an act of destruction relative to that character. And then the final set of horses we saw, you caught, was in the grave mount. The horses carrying the grave, his coffin, and those are white. So
I found it interesting, though. They had actually 2 set of horses in that case.
Yeah.
When Superman was being carried in a black coffin by the military, it was a dark horse.
Uh-huh.
And when he was being carried by the man in the Saturn hat out to his grave at the farm, it was white horses. So Kent gets white horses and Superman gets dark horses.
Interesting. That
Yeah, I
makes
found
sense.
that very interesting, too.
So
He's the Dark Knight.
yeah, I'm not really... That whole scene, by the way, in the graveyard, right down to having a redhead kneel at the grave and wait, that's straight out of the end of The Dark Knight Returns. Except for it's Robin who's the redhead waiting for her Osiris to rise. So Superman rising, Horus does perish. So Horus, you know,
I
dies once a
just
day.
super
So-
wish that they did the Dark Knight comic book as it was. You know,
The
especially
whole
with-
fight between them had all the life sucked out of it, I thought.
You know,
The whole Martha connection.
why would you say that?
Yes.
You know, actually, since I did that, I think it's hilarious. I can just see it. So many people are gonna have comparisons between the Superman, where is she? And the Dark Knight, where is she?
Well, I can tell you why that name...
Where is she?
I figured out why that name actually rang a bell for him. It goes down to a Saturnian identifier. Names with the prefix MAR, like Mary, Martha, Margaret, they all actually are tied to the same other prefix relating to the ocean, like marine, so which ties back to Saturn. So by identifying that they both had a mother named Martha, it's an indication that they are in fact brothers, right? Because they're brothers from a mother with the same name. Essentially, it rung his bell. I found it was insufficient to make him stop, because the whole reason he was even there was because Superman has callously disregarded all of the damage and suffering that was caused to him, right? All of it. And here, Lois Lane is freaking grieving about a few guys who were murdered in a desert who were obviously cutthroat. And she's having a hard time sleeping at night. Superman participated in the death of hundreds and the disability of thousands. And the guy who's actually doing stuff, Bruce Wayne, he had a whole foundation, you can see in the movie, set aside to pay people to help take care of them. Like, he took on the responsibility for that damage.
That's what I'm saying.
And Clark Kent did not, and Superman did not. It frustrated me. In fact, to me, Clark Kent becomes truly the cautionary tale of small-mindedness. Here's the guy who can see through objects and has no vision.
He's a really excellent rendition of Apollo. So with that being said, of course he's going to have all of this stuff happening around him. But, you know, it's all about him, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's
You know
well,
what I
that's
mean?
the Zeus thing too, where it's just you want to look at, which is still Jupiter.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the narcissism of that
That's
deity.
basically what I'm saying, yeah, for sure. It's pure narcissism.
Well, and it
pure
comes from
ego,
being in the pillar
pure
of
ego.
mercy. You know, it comes from that drop down where the things you care about are only the things you love, as opposed to you care about things because they have value into society.
Which
or people
made
or,
it even better when he pulled Batman out of the car and was like, "Consider this mercy."
Yeah, right,
That was perfect.
right. Wasn't that great?
Absolutely
He
perfect.
declared himself, and you know, I caught it when he pulls the doors off of the car. It's like pulling the wings off the bat, right? It was like, shh, you know, I've grounded you. You're done. And the whole thing about do you bleed? That's really Saturn going, do you have limitation? You know, and then you will have
That line
limitation.
should have been delivered during their fight, and then him being like, "Just remember, I'm the one man that beat you."
Right?
Yeah,
Where was that line?
Cartoon. I was waiting for him to
it.
say, "Just remember that you were
Before
beaten,"
he walked
you know?
away,
So
like
that
he could still do the
everyone-
Martha
Exactly.
thing, right?
Yeah.
But then look
But
at him
he
and go,
should've-
dude, never fucking forget this
Yeah,
moment.
never forget.
You
that
know?
you can't mess with mankind because he. You know,
Yeah, I've got your number.
Man versus God.
Yeah, it
So, with
proves Batman's the magician.
Yeah, I've
Concept of him-
definitely.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
But the concept of him killing people, like, I kind of almost can tolerate it, just for the simple fact that it's like thinking about the process of getting the kryptonite. I mean, that's a heavy waiter. So, like, you know.
Yeah, you see, here's that
I
whole
don't
thing.
know. I don't know.
Those guards that were wheeled out in the ambulances and stuff, that could have been me, man, at one point going through college, because I worked at an industrial park as a security guy. Just a dude, man. And
Yeah.
what? Batman just put all you guys in the hospital for just clocking in that night on the wrong freaking night, right?
But they just went to the hospital.
Yeah.
But for the people
Yeah.
that he, like, blew the car
Yeah.
up
He was
I
like
was like,
outright killing
he
people.
really murdered
Those dudes that
them.
he okay,
Totally
that
against
one
the
car
concept of-
that he cable hooks, right?
Uh-huh.
There were 4 dudes in there
I
that
thought
might
that
have still
was
been
weird.
alive, and then he drags them through the street
Right?
and then flips them so he crushes the other 4 dudes in the other car. There's at least 8 guys dead right there.
Well,
I
whether
mean, it's-
Batman doesn't
Yeah.
play around.
Well,
so.
you see, and I can get that if I didn't have in my head this line written by Frank Miller in The Tunnel of Love as he's fighting the Joker.
Right.
And the Joker's like, you know, all the guys that you let me, you know, all the guys I let you kill or whatever. It's this whole deal about it's my fault that everyone's dead because I never had the guts to cross the line and do you in, and that ends tonight. And then it didn't end because all he did was break his neck. And then Joker's all like, you couldn't go through it, could you? You just can't cross that line. And that's the one thing that makes him different. The other thing that was a problem was the use of firearms, because Saturnian archetypes don't use firearms. They use close-in weaponry. That's why, because Saturn doesn't have a large electromagnetic influence. Solar archetypes use all sorts of firearms, bows and arrows, shuriken perhaps, guns, long rifles. The Punisher is a great example. Anything that fires a bullet. So that's on the other side. Batman shouldn't be shooting guns, and he definitely, I don't think he shouldn't be, you know, like in The Dark Knight Returns, the mutant guy in the junkyard, right? Remember him? He picks up and he's like, rubber bullets, really? Come on. So he was using what seemed like lethal force, but it still was just to subdue a bunch of murderers. Yeah, what did you think about Superman? This is just my own pet peeve, but here he is in his apartment with Lois Lane, and he hops in the bathtub, and she's like, "You're going to flood the apartment," and he's like, "Yeah," and then they make out, right? Now it's very romantic until you're the dude in the apartment below Superman, whom he cares about as much as he cares about
Well, I think it
everyone else.
goes to show exactly his mentality.
He just
is
totally
her
doesn't.
And she's his world, and that's it. I mean, he says it clearly. You are my world. And then in the Vision, he's going to kill Batman because he destroyed his world. So I think that's grounds for
Which is a
movie.
take from Injustice: Gods Among Us.
Yeah.
Clearly, they borrowed that storyline, so gamers out there will be satisfied to see that yet another DC story arc of alternative realities. And I think that's the one thing that I thought was the coolest part, like with the future Batman and stuff, is that Batman is like this time traveler. And if you go to the DC Online universe and you play on there, you get to play through, I'm out there a lot, and you get to play through a lot of these storylines. And so you get to meet alternate reality Batmans, which are cool,
You know what, I it's kind of off topic, but it's not really. But back to Flashpoint Paradox, I think it would be really cool if they brought in Batman's dad that they showed in the very beginning.
Thomas Wayne.
Yeah, he did great as the comedian.
Yeah.
And I think he would do great as a very pissed off, angry Batman.
Oh man, would he
do
be an
so
awesome
good.
Thomas Wayne?
Yeah,
You
he
know,
would
that
do
might be
so
where they
good.
did the really unnecessary origin story.
So that you'd get the actor in there so you could see a Thomas Wayne.
That is part of why it
Oh
happened.
man, you heard it
That's
first
a
here.
prediction.
I think that's going to happen.
I
think that's gonna
definitely think
happen.
that's why they gave you the story over again.
Yep. Oh my gosh,
also-
that means his mom can be the Joker.
Which
Yeah.
would be amazing.
Sweet. Oh, that's so cool.
But at the same time,
Yes.
I still think that it was also the director being like, look how poetic I am and look how I know my Kabbalah because I'm doing all this
But-
in such a beautiful
Yeah, he was
Something
doing
I
all
It was
that.
well done.
thought was
Kind of
interesting
but well
was
done.
that Batman was not narrating his own story and saying, oh, when he falls into the pit and they lift him up out of the tunnel.
Now, did you notice he turned into a bat?
Yeah.
His silhouette turned into a bat? That was cool.
I was
That
like,
very cool.
he was like, if only that were the truth. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then also with the manor being broken down,
Burned
and
down.
I was like,
I don't know
so
what
are
happened
they
to the
taking
main
that
manor? Yeah.
from the last series of The Dark Knight where he burns down the manor at the end?
Yeah.
Or, were they just attributing to that? Or are they going to have a whole story going on? Because even in the manor, they have tags, like with the Riddler tag. If you, go through and, kind of stop it down. I watched a couple videos where they kind of slowed it down so you could see
Easter
what
eggs.
was being put around.
Yeah.
So, I'm really eager to see what DC's going to do with Justice League.
That's
It's
the
gonna
thing
be-
this is just the cracking of the Orphic egg right now. That's all it is.
One comment I wanted to say about Lex Luthor,
Mhm.
about what
Jesse
his,
Eisenberg's
Yeah.
performance.
more about what his meaning in the whole story was about, which I think was all selfish and self-involved, which was when he's given the speech to Superman about how when he was younger he'd come to realize that power isn't innocent and so therefore God isn't innocent.
Right.
Innocent, and then when he gets Superman to bend to his knees and he's like, now I have God bending to my will. That is the whole basis, I think, of his reason for the movie.
I would agree. I would
he-
agree. That seemed to be.
Yeah,
and
he's
then he wanted
not-
to destroy it, but
yeah,
it just
But
to
he's
me there was
insane.
no motive
That's-
because comic book wise, they grew up together in Smallville. They're familiar with each
Yeah.
other. And
This
there's
one's
this
not that
jealousy and
way.
enmity.
But
That's why I think it's the son of
I
Lex
think
Luthor.
there's a lot of similarities in the character in the sense of Heath Ledger's Joker of just chaos and there's no real reason
No,
for
absolutely.
chaos, just
They
for
both
chaos,
fulfill
the sake
solar
of
archetypes.
watching it, yeah. So I think that he's kind of in a way like that where it's just
You called
There's
it. That's exactly what he
anime.
is.
An
And
anime
all
where
the
Lex
action will
Luthor-
revolve around him just like it would revolve around the sun.
Yeah.
So that's exactly
He's
right.
thrown
And to
everything.
place him as a smaller person is also correct because from our perspective, the sun is very distant, very small, and yet has an extraordinary impact.
Yeah.
So alchemically, when you're looking at that, astrologically, this is why David, is fighting Goliath, and the sun is David, and Jupiter is Goliath. And it's all relative perspective. So he's a small guy exhibiting a lot of force. I caught all that. I just got, I don't know. Maybe it was just the whole shaking of the lip and the trembling.
Maybe it was because his voice was too high pitched for you.
Well, like, for instance, there were weird things he had to say, like, the red capes are coming, the red capes are coming. I'm like, there's only one dude in a red cape. So
maybe a little more of a production going on there.
Maybe, yeah. Who knows? It could be. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to Captain America: Civil War. I cannot wait.
That will be pretty cool.
Just can't wait for that one. I wish they hadn't shown us Spider-Man was in it. I really do. I think that's another third act spoiler.
Yeah.
We're gonna close on this. No more third act spoilers. I'm serious, you guys. It's on you. You should get out there and start something on Twitter. No more third act spoilers. #.
Oh, that's what the whole
because it ruins
Superman
everything.
versus Batman things were all the third act. I mean,
all the trailers were all third act stuff.
That's what I was worried about. Is you'd go into the movie and the biggest, most awesome parts of the movie were the parts they gave you in the trailer.
Yeah, we saw them.
That was kind of lame, but
that's what my pet peeve with.
I would have liked a little more like.
Because I'm afraid seeing Harley Quinn in the water there with Joker holding her. Yeah. So help me, if they kill Harley Quinn off in this movie.
I don't.
Touch one little hair on her frosted blonde head.
I feel like that's more of a creation point of Harley Quinn.
You think
I think they could be going back in time. Because
she was his doctor.
I know, and so I think what's going, because when she's in the water, you have the blue dye and the purple dye, and those are on the tips of her hair.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's a prediction, or not a prediction. I think that's a past view of something that's happened. I think that's them looking back, and that one's gonna be cool.
It's gonna be awesome.
Do a whole other conversation on Death Squad. That one's.
Well, thank you, ladies. Yeah. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Internet, for hanging out with us. This is Honest Movie Reviews, and this is our spoiler edition on Batman vs. Superman.
Yeah, hopefully you've seen it.
Yeah, right. If you haven't seen it, well, you've heard most of the stuff that we found weird and good. So, and we're excited about what's coming.
It was a great movie as its own.
I will own it. Yeah.
For
you
sure.
own it? You buy it?
I
Okay. I'll probably wind up getting it just because, it was all right. It's not a super awesome, but it wasn't super bad.
It's definitely one of the better movies of anything you can see in theaters at this time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. We'll be talking to you soon.